let's dive into our next panel discussion, that is digital threat protection strategies to mitigate cyber risk across banking and financial sector. To moderate this panel, I would like to welcome S.V. Sundarkrishnan, Chief Risk Officer, Reliance Nippon Life Insurance. Along with him, we have with us our esteemed speakers, Mr. Baiju Joshi, Chief Risk Officer, Future General India Life Insurance, Mr. Sunil Kumar KN, Chief Compliance Officer, Federal Bank, Mr. Gaurav Chaudhary, Chief Technology Officer, Reliance General Insurance, Mr. T.R. Venkateswaran, Chief Information Security Officer, Punjab National Bank, Ms. Babita BP, Chief Information Security Officer, CSB Bank, and Mr. Srinivasa Rao Mupaneni, Group CIO, Telangana State Cooperative, Apex Bank. A very warm welcome to you all. Now, I would like to hand over the session to Mr. S.V. Sundarkrishnan to take it further. Look ahead to a great discussion, sir. Thank you so much.
Sundar, you are on mute.
Yeah, thank you, Pratishtha. I think it's a very important summit. We've got illustrious panelists with us to attend to us. And even the digital threat as we speak is quite important because most organizations in the financial services world have transformed themselves digitally in the last 6 years with investments in digital transformation and information security and digital threat protection going up every
Hello.
year by year. Yeah, can you hear me? Yeah. So across banking,
Yeah,
insurance, and mutual fund, the digital threats have increased. Uh, there are new types of risks that come. There are new types of penetration attacks that are being launched, and organizations are fighting to survive, to thrive, and also help the digital transformation journey that is ongoing. Of course, the backdrop of all this is COVID era. COVID has accelerated digital transformation. COVID has accelerated security management in digital era, and uh, impacted several organizations positively in terms of moving towards the transformation journey. So, my first question would be to the panelists, and this is on how do you quantify the impact of COVID on security, and what holistic approach would you recommend to prevent attacks and ensure maximum protection? I think we can start with Mr. Sunil Kumar, and then we move on to others.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Sundar. Basically, the COVID is one scenario which completely changed because everything has become new normal after the COVID. Lots of lockdowns and the health issues and all the hazards have created the traditional office environment working virtually impossible. So many of the organizations in India at that time actually started looking towards the uh, working from home or any other remote working mechanism. So when we look at the trajectory, what has happened in connection with the security, the banks were always because in the financial world, banks were expected to maintain the security at the highest levels on various fronts. One is the sensitive customer and confidential data are available with them, and the sensitive and confidential financial transactions of the clients are handled. So, in that context, security has been given the high priority. The biggest part is that even though there are other parameters also where the traditional model is changing, immediately on a fine day, it started that the traditional methodologies are not working, people are not in the office, and then how to grapple with situation because the institution has to run also because the banking and financial transaction, though the volume has reduced drastically, it cannot be stopped immediately. That was the scenario. So the quantify the impact means actually it is very difficult to quantify because it has completely disrupted the whole mechanism. So that stage, how actually banks started, because banks in the foreign environment and many of the multinational companies and all, work from home culture was there. So great extent they had that equipment and the machinery system support all to uh, in such environment to work. But they also face the similar type of the challenges. And another thing has happened is that during this time is what the regulators were also very wary about what is happening. So their demand for certain type of data and all the security measures, how your systems are running, how you are building the controls, all those enquiries started to increase. And this is the time actually people, the organizations were required to respond immediately to these requests, whereas they don't have the capacity and mechanism. So, but I think within 1 or 2 months itself, the whole process has been evolved in such a way that actually the employees were able to work from the outside, and reasonable amount of security care has been taken with regard to their access to the systems and auditing to that extent. And one of the things many of the banks might have done is that a constant way of monitoring every day, getting the data from the various points and doing certain types of audit. I understand many of the banks have done that uh, parallel check, so that at least there are certain amount of controls can be built, or at least we will get immediately the alert to that extent the next day itself, that yes, something is wrong, or this area is very high risk, things are pending lot, or certain security concerns are coming up like that. And this is one of the major area I would say is the treasury operations has got biggest impact, because many times the BCPs were also not ready to that extent and is not working very well. But that initial stages, one advantage, because of it was all affected with the COVID, and people or even the regulators to that extent were also comfortable to give some more time. So we got that requisite time, and to a certain extent that because of the lockdown and initial clamp down happening of many of the transactions, the readiness, the timeline available for the readiness also worked well. So the overall, yes, the COVID has strengthened everything, and it has created a new environment. We may not be able to quantify how much that is there, but during this COVID time, actually, if you look at the security threat and the fraudulent incidents were there, because number of the transactions gone down, even the fraudsters were not able to operate to that extent. So naturally, uh, the things have gone down. During the COVID period, the reported incidents of fraud and security breaches were comparatively less, at least in the financial industry. So I will stop it here. This is what the broad picture we can give from the as far as the impact and the approaches taken with the organization. So I will move on to the next panelist.
Thank you. My question is to the insurance veteran, Mr. Gaurav Chaudhary. What are your initial views on impact of COVID on your business?
So I was going through some reports, some the thanks in the I was going through some reports, and I was trying to figure out what exactly has been the impact. Okay, and this is a presentation which I had made to the board also recently, a few quarters back, where I was studying the cybersecurity trends which are there in India, and there's a report which has been published also. So as per that, India itself has reported cybercrime up by 500%. Okay, and out of that, of course, globally also, India also had the I won't say the honor, but to be the third top three attacked countries as far as cyber attacks are concerned in the world. Okay, so both are increasing. Of course, there is geopolitics and all that stuff which is involved, and that's why the threat to the country is going. But what I'm glad is that that the regulators are and multiple regulators, not just IRDA, like certain and all that, are taking proactive steps in trying to ensure that at least in insurance and of course in banking also, to look at avenues and ways to have a consolidated effort across industries in order to figure out ways and manners and guidelines to in order to better improve the threat response which an organization can have. Okay, if you see, India and the national cybersecurity strategy, and there is something called a cybersecurity index, which is there. We have jumped to 10th place. I think we were in the 50s or 60s earlier. So that is primarily because there has been a countrywide effort and focus on trying to improve the way things are happening at a regulatory level, at a government level, at a organization levels. So that's just a background wanted to give. In terms of this thing, of course, Mr. Sunil had spoken about the fact that now the kind of devices which we're using in primary environment, which is in a work environment, that of course we have to take and move at home, and a lot of people didn't have laptops. We had to make do with private, people's own laptops, because there was a dearth of laptops availability in the market, and you've seen the prices also going through the roof. So we had to, in fact, ship desktops to a lot of our devices, and desktops are typically not as well protected as a laptop because of the nature of the device, because it is always in an office environment. So those activities had to be, of course, picked up and done fast. And now the environment is such that typically you have this what you call a DR drill, or an activity where you try to figure out that in case of any event, how do we ensure that people can work from an alternate location. Now that's now well and thoroughly tested in the last 2 years, and everybody can be working from anywhere equally effectively. And that's something which is basically the blurring of line between personal and an official this thing. So what I think what needs to be done, and we are trying to look at it, is that how can we more and more make personal and official devices and a personal space and official space work within the same device. Okay, because a lot of it is moved to WhatsApp, and one of the reasons that WhatsApp has become like a secondary device for communication, even for official communications. Okay, how do we protect against that? Okay, that's that. While we might say we've got official mails and all that stuff, but people still rely on WhatsApp for a lot of conversation, a lot of sharing, a lot of escalations. Everything is happening through WhatsApp or related messaging apps. That needs to be also brought into the fold of information security, and that's very important. And what we're also trying to do is harden the devices. In Reliance Capital, you're well aware that we've picked up information security standards have been raised to rather a very high level with the within the last 2 years. We've got EDRs which are installed at at a server level. We've got EDRs on desktops and laptops also, so which is augmenting the capabilities of an antivirus in order to secure things. Okay, and as an organization in Reliance, what we've also done is that two things which are very important, which are small but very important, is that we have increased the password length for all the staff to 14 characters. Okay, what learning we got over the last few years was that 8-digit passwords are very easy to crack now. Gone are the days that used to take days. We've had teams coming in who showed us that they've been able to crack several thousand passwords in a few hours, just because they were 8-digit, and of course they were repetitive in nature. So both of the activities we've done very, very well across the organization, where we have been able to, firstly, of course, make the passwords 14 characters, of course, with the complexity which is necessary, and also ensured that last 30 passwords can't be repeated. Okay, so gone are the days when people will use even in January at 1, 2, 3, 4 and all that stuff. So that those are very simple to use passwords, and that's very important, because eventually whatever a hacking hacker will try is eventually break into a single password and then go forward. Okay, that's the best way, and that's still the prevalent way to go forward. So those are the kind of things which we brought forward. And of course, the last and foremost thing which we've done is that bring about extensive trainings to the staff, because information security is not the domain of just the information security teams. It is prevalent all over. It starts with the last mile, which is the person on the sales guys who's on the road. He's using a device, and that device gets compromised, or he's using a laptop in a public environment that get compromised. So training is very important. The best practices of cybersecurity and how that continues, that is very important, because now uh, it's no longer the secure that you secure just the office environment and you're safe. You have to be safe wherever you are and whichever device you are using. That's where I leave it, Sundar. Thanks.
Thank you. My next question is to Mr. T.R. Venkateshwaran, uh, CISO, Punjab National Bank. Can you add your perspective on how do we prevent attacks, and what kind of holistic approach you would recommend to ensure maximum protection? Yeah. And of course, impact of COVID. Yeah.
Good afternoon. See, attacks will be there. Okay. So when we open up the networks, and when we open up the people to and enable them for work from home and from work from anywhere, the nature of attacks also will change. So we should be equipped we should be prepared for the attacks, and our response should be there. The first thing is we should
Yeah, we can hear you, sir.
have a security strategy, and we are telling see, when we were in the on-prem situation, okay, then we also came to the web, then we started looking at the cloud security. Now we are looking at the work from home security. Okay, so the security solutions also will get evolved to meet the emerging requirements. So how easily we adapt these security solutions to meet the requirements. If you take for the work from home, some of the security solutions will be the protection of the mobile devices. One is the mobile device management, mobile threat protection, and the containerized app, mobile device management, and VPN. These will be the technologies. Then this two-factor authentication will be very important. Then we also look at the privileged identity management. So when people are accessing from home the critical implementations, there is need to see or know what has been done or who is doing what. So this this privileged identity management will be very important. So the present issues which we are facing is that when we are working in banks or financial institutions, mostly we have been focused on on-prem implementations. So when we want to cater to on-prem implementations and the work from home scenarios, there will be need to tweak our devices or the security architecture to meet the emerging requirements, and the industry also has to cope up with these requirements. However, what I have been seeing is there is acute shortage of skill sets in the industry. That is the cyber security skill sets. Then if you take the security solutions, whatever is being offered in the on-prem security solutions which have emerged over a period of time, still it is evolving for the cloud security solutions. So unless these features or these requirements are met, there will be challenges in understanding the type of attacks or our responses to those attacks. So the incident response in the emerging scenario is becoming very important. And regulators are also monitoring the various aspects. So one is the awareness of the cybersecurity or the need for cybersecurity among the public and the staff who are using work from home. So this becomes important. And what I have seen is the security solutions adoption has become faster with the during the COVID scenario. Even though we have been facing challenges as regards the availability or as regards the procurements. See, especially in procurements, the issue is the vendors, they have shut down their offices, and some of the required documents which are required for the procurements, they are facing challenges in timely providing these documents. And similarly, there has been shortage of PCs, there has been shortage of semiconductors, silicon chips. These are also having an impact on the production of the devices, and which is also having an impact on project implementation. So there is need for looking at various things and evolving further improvements in the setup. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was quite an interesting perspective of the changes that have happened. My next question is to the insurance person, Mr. Baiju Joseph. What is your take on the COVID impact and on the security approach?
Sure. So when the world rushed to support the remote workforce, all of us actually were literally digging into the VPN devices or VDA devices and put up everything together and enable our users to work from wherever they are. Now, since all the IT guys or security guys have some breathing time, we are really thinking and discussing about the security. And I'm happy about these forums focusing on security. Security and networks team looking into the future, that means secure access services at the edge. Okay, that's what actually does matter going forward. And delivering uniform visibility of the control to the CRO or the CISO of the world for the web access, cloud access, and your private app accesses. So that's essential. Today it is only known to administrators, right? So we don't know the actually prevailing risk unless an incident really occur. Just to throw some numbers on the table, I just read somewhere around 10.5 trillion cybercrime is estimated. The cost is estimated by 2025. That essentially means all this is going to happen 2025. So that's huge. That's how we're going to secure ourselves is going to be really yet to see. And let me put the classify of the trends of the problems into two buckets: external and internal. So external cybercrime. Another external one is about the requirements which is specified by even with all the regulations, like even India is coming up with our own data protections, GDPR. So it's going to be security going forward till at least next 3 years. And the internal one, which I see, I can clearly and evidently say that we are observing rapid increase of attack threats on my perimeter. I mean, I'm talking about generally as a multiple companies, life and non-life company itself. A rapid rise in last 1.5 years. It's also to do with technology evolution, because we pumped in, we opened all on-prem VPNs or on some kind of things just suddenly to the external world. And now suddenly it's coming to BSR, that is security scores, how your maturities are going to be, all this. But problem is 70% of the users continue to be working remotely. More than half of the web gateways traffic is available to the cloud. So, and rest, I mean 50% is hybrid, that means 50% is on-prem as well as 50% is on from cloud. Only we are enabling, I mean, just as a technology, we are only enable TLS encryption, where TLS encryption means just basic SSL encryptions That's all we have riding on today, nothing beyond. So what does this means? This puts lot of stress or lot of way going forward, and everyone need to actually budget beyond what exactly used to budget, at least 3x 4x for next 3 years. So rather than actually trying to say what exactly going to, we have so much of problem going to be on our hand going forward. We are not done the work from home, set up really what the way it is supposed to be. And if I draw an imagery, earlier it was very simple. You work from branch, very few people who used to work from home. It was definable, and some of them are on mobile for only for email accesses. Today it is a completely mesh network. You have 3 or 4 different cloud service providers. You have person working from anywhere. We don't know where he's working from today, the employee. Exactly, only we know the devices. So what I am trying to say is slowly we are shifting from that device, trusting that device or device trusting that person. We want to make it intelligently and context-based access management, context-based rights management, to ensure to compete and be relevant and be not in part of that 10.5 trillion cyber attack, be part of that particular. That's the thing which I would like to put it on the table or a discussion about today.
Excellent, sir. Very good perspective. My last speaker, Ms. Babita, maybe you could throw some light on the security approach
Yeah,
in the
thank you.
scenario.
Yes, thank you, Sundar, for the wonderful question. And as other panelists has already mentioned, this pandemic has created many unforeseen tasks for us as CISOs or But one positive thing which I would tell when it comes to COVID is the digital acceptance of digitalization. Earlier only 10 to 15% of people were doing digital transactions, and that too we rate high class people, and they are using digital channel for their day-to-day activity. Now, if we can see that there is a rise up to 85%. Everyone is now using digital channels for their day-to-day activity. This acceptance of digitalization and the sudden movement to the digitalization is what has led to the rise of cyber frauds. Cyber fraud was there earlier also, but now the number of instances has increased, and that is why people are more worried about it. Here, one thing which I would like to tell is, due to the sudden BCP requirement, many of the people were rushed to the cloud. They have adopted to new technologies immediately without identifying a lot of gaps in that. And even we see that in a supermarket, which was not having a website, they immediately started a website. Through that website, normal people are buying things, and we are sharing our card details in that website. How secured is the website? Who is going to check that? The data leakage is happening. Card data is being sold. So who is going to take care of that? So primarily, we have adopted to digitalization without creating awareness in the society that what can be shared with the technology and how this technology need to be used. So that is a major gap which has come with the COVID, which I think now regulators and even government has taken enough measures to sensitize and educate the public about the importance of cybersecurity, what data can be shared. If you are installing an app, what kind of data can be shared through that app. A simple example which I would like to quote here is, we are installing a weather app. So what is the purpose of that app? We should know what is the weather condition. If I'm going to Chennai, or if there is a rain, I have to carry a umbrella or not. But that app, when installing, is asking for a complete access for the mobile. Why we have to give a complete access just to know that what is the temperature or the weather? So that kind of awareness should be created in the public, and there should be some regulations in place that what all data that app can use. So that will lead to the data privacy and data protection. So all these things are major gaps which has come during the time of the pandemic, and what we can do now. Now we are working, rightly said by Vaitu sir and other panelists, is that we don't have a perimeter now. Earlier we have a physical security, software security, and all the security, and we have visibility of the device also. And when we talk about the security, we can secure a device only if we have the visibility of the device. That's what we talk about in the IT shadow IT. So we have gone for a work from home kind of culture, the visibility of the device has been, we are not getting a proper visibility, and the security aspects is also getting compromised. So how securely we can give that access is the where we depend on the technology. And as we all know, we have a very good dedicated VPN services with us, wherein we can incorporate time-based access, multi-factor authentication, all those sort of technological requirements. That is what we CISOs are doing, that we are defining the security based on the business requirement. Now, when we are moving to the cloud, many of the people are just straight away moving to the cloud without knowing what data is to be shared to the cloud. That will lead to data breach. So that is how lot of data breaches has come across during this pandemic time. Now, data is the jewel, crown jewel. That how we are going to secure that data, that should be our primary task. And for that, we have to adapt to multi-level security with a zero trust architecture in place, so that we should be in a way that anytime we might be breached, but how fast we will be able to detect it. That is what matters.
Yeah, thank you. I think very interesting perspective. I think first round of discussions have got several challenges also being thrown. We have cloud, we have we have anywhere access, and we're looking at a 10.5 trillion value cybercrime attack up to 2025, and great increase in cybercrimes, 500% or perhaps. And added to that is the complex architectures we are going into, at least giving 4 types of accesses. With a lot of people being hybrid, work from home, come work from anywhere, come office. And all this is brought about. And added to that is the movement from 10% digitalization to 85%, 85% digitalization. And acceptance of that. Even in a country like ours, very, very common person now uses digital mobilization and digitalization for processing transactions. So they're just bringing in a very, very complex structure, complex environment. And cloud, of course, has increased the use of cloud. And it has brought about a lot of interesting perspectives. On the one hand, of course, it's very efficient and transformative. But on the other hand, you have security challenges and there are some barriers. How do we overcome these challenges and how do we migrate to a zero trust security mode using cloud? Is my next question. So I would like Mr. Sunil to throw some perspective on that.
Yeah. The significant barrier to the security. See, it is one thing we need to definitely, the new technology development, what is happening, and the pandemic and all have created challenges. But before that itself, there were the similar type of challenges were evolving. So if you look at that way, I would put it in 3 categories. Basically, the changing business model. The security related threat has got a very significant place when we say that the changing business model that I'm talking about in the financial sector, particularly to the bank in the context. Earlier, everything was in-house. Then slowly it started, the transformation happened. Things happen in such a way that we are outsourcing. So the outsourcing related risks were there to a certain extent, and there were regulatory controls. Then from the outsourcing, it went to a BC, business correspondent or a business facilitator model, particularly in the banking area in the context of financial inclusion. So the front-end client facing and client onboarding processes used through a BC. Now that has been transformed. Now it is coming up is the fintech arrangement. So you look at the transformation, what has happened in all this time. The earlier everything was within the four walls. So the concept of that branch itself in the Banking Regulation Act, you should do all these transactional activities within the branch premises. You have a lot of controls to that extent, or you have a very good say over things what are happening. Now, when this transformation, third parties and all this fintech services are being availed by the banks to that great extent, the data, the security aspect, and are all moving. The bank's control is completely reducing. So it is just bank's control over this transactional data, customer data, and the security aspect clearly decimated to that extent. How we are all controlling all these things? Merely with a contractual arrangement. So the regulatory requirement says, so these things should be there in the contract. And so this is one of the biggest barrier I would say in all this security maintenance, is that one of the fundamental thing, we are completely dependent on third parties to that extent, fintech and other security providers, and at the same time, all these controls are built in a narrow contractual arrangement. And in India, very well, very rarely the contracts are not performed or the honored like what is happening in a developed world and all, because the consequences of the contract non-performance is not very significant because of our legal system and the mechanism it is going on like that. So that is one part we need to see, the one of the biggest barrier coming up. It is an opportunity one side also, because definitely the fintechs are giving newer solutions to that extent. It's an opportunity, but there is a barrier to that extent. The second transformation, what has happened is that change in the product offer itself. So it is again the customers coming to the branch and applying for certain things, physical documents, everything has been changed. Now the customers can actually, or the clients are being approached through various apps and all, and whether it is a lending or a deposit or even a complex treasury product also, everything the client is picking and choosing. And in the process, all these mechanism and systems, apps, everything we have developed in such a way that ease of transaction, the customer convenience, that is a very, very biggest motto from the business perspective and the growth perspective when we are looking ease of transaction. And here also UPI type of transaction, the entire thing is with the NPCI, the security structure and everything is built. So the difference what I am seeing is that basically it is all moved away from the bank's control and it is being relied on the third party. That is what the fundamental thing. And in that process, we are actually, many of the security related controls, we are relooking in this particular context. Now then, let us coming to the cloud, because it is in that context is coming up. In the cloud context, what is happening is that, yes, earlier the data, everything stored here, the processing system, the memory of the system, everything is there. Now everything has been moved away from this, and we believe that all this mechanism, there is no physical audit is not possible. Physical segregation to that extent is not possible. Everything as physical has moved into a logical segregation, a logical auditing mechanism. It has moved in that direction. So all these things, nobody has seen the God, but we believe God is there. So this is what happening behind the scene. So, but we are they are the big players, and they are in the, whether it is Microsoft or Google or whichever is the Amazon, they are all the big players. They have the facility, capacity, and the innovations are there, and better control mechanisms are there. We all believe as it is all happening to that extent. So all these three areas, when we look at the biggest part, is what I'm seeing is that it is going out of our eyesight and it is going to a distance place. That is where the biggest barrier is coming up. So now, how to address this from, I'm not a technical person to that extent, so I'm not looking at the technology part, but at the strategy wise, from a compliance or a broader reputational or a regulatory perspective, when we looking at one aspect, how to, what would be the control mechanism, what should be our, to overcome these challenges. One mechanism definitely is to have a common industry type of standards for onboarding the party arrangements and all. Of course, in many of the international scene, it has been happened, but in India, either the bankers association or the financial institutions are regulated to that extent. Of course, the RBI Innovation Hub is one of the process it is looking into how these innovations can be actually looked into from a security and an audit all this perspective and how that can be utilized by the banks. It's only a beginning, but the common industry standard to that extent for the engagement of the third party service providers needs to be developed. So another thing is again the setting of the audit standards or the periodic audit mechanism that needs to be strengthened. These are the only ways actually banks will have that, yes, the security mechanism what has been told to them is working in this particular way or it is satisfactory to that extent. And another aspect is coming up is that looking at the system, because banks were all the financial institution developed the system over a period of time, and many times the systems may not be talking to each other, and many of the systems may have the external linkage also. So that is where the point is coming up, whether it is hacking or a security threat is happening. I'm not saying that if it is all funneled in one place, it will not happen, but at least we will have a better control. So it is very critical to have that inventory of all the systems to that extent, and where the external linkage is, limit that external linkages to great extent, and if it can be funneled and to a particular way, and then there can be all the securities mechanism can be put, that would be very useful. And one of the fundamental principle is that we can't make everything for ease. So we can't compromise on the security only for the ease of purpose, because many times when we interact with the fintech, because they are in a different, they are in the innovation stage. It is not like a financial institution who has got 50 years or 75 years of the history and legacy to that extent. So for them, any mistakes, yes, that can be corrected. So sometimes when mistakes are seen, when we challenge the answer, oh, oops, I made a mistake, I will rectify. But I don't think the bankers can afford to say that, oops, I made a mistake, because that is what the biggest challenge. So both the players who are now interacting are having two different parameters and different standards. That is where this set of a unified standard set, and standards can't be a crystal, what I'm saying, it can't be constant forever. It has to be evolved and it has to be periodically modified to that extent. So these are all the 3 or 4 aspects I see from a strategic perspective when we look to ensure the security in this changing world. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. I think very interesting perspective, Mr. Sunil Kumar, especially when you outsource, when you don't have data and you require standards across. But yeah, I would like to now ask Mr. Gaurav Chaudhary, how do we address the cloud challenge and what are the barriers and how do we migrate to the cloud?
So cloud is a difficult animal, and it is much abused because people relate and attribute a lot of things to the cloud. Okay, cloud is as secure as you make it. Okay, it's just a data center in the sky. And of course, if you look at the PaaS model, the SaaS model, then of course the cloud security resides with the owner of the SaaS or the PaaS setup. But primarily, a lot of us are moving to the cloud as the infrastructure on the cloud, where the entire security of the setup lies with the person themselves, the client themselves. And but what clouds gives us is basically the fear of obsolescence. The cost of obsolescence is, of course, it's baked into the cost, but it is spread over and it's an OpEx cost which you deal with. Okay, having said that, cloud also makes it easier for you to pick and choose the partners and to enable those services on a pay-per-use. Okay, and a lot of times organizations, especially if you take into, and I'm not talking about specifically to mid-size or large-size organizations like ours, especially if organizations which are small or reaching the middle tier, they cannot really go in for the expensive solutions which are available in the market. The capex investments which are required for buying in a dedicated WAF environment or a dedicated firewall or a dedicated IPS. So that those set of tools and infosec services are made available as services rather than devices which you need to procure. So that becomes easier because typically a lot of these smaller organizations will work with the thought that we have to go in for a capex investment, which is concerning for a lot of them and is not possible in a lot of cases. So that is one benefit of the cloud, that you can pay per use. You can tweak the performance parameters in order to make it more suitable for you. The resources can be shared, so hence the cost is also shared. So all those benefits, of course, come to the cloud. But all in all, the security of most of these environments resides in your hands, and how what all tools you make enable onto that environment is something which each organization has to decide on its own. Okay. No cloud provider will ever say that the security of the cloud is completely their baby. It is the baby of the person who's using those services. So cloud is not a do all and a end all mantra kind of thing which can solve all the problems. Yes, it makes a lot of these decisions easier, a lot of these decisions cost effective, and hence overall, if you look at it from a user's perspective, it is a easier adoption and a less time consuming option than most would look at. So all in all, I am my environment, one third of my environment, and most of my critical production services are running on the cloud, and the setup is robust. It is secure, and it is secure because we chose to make it secure. So that's my point of view.
Great, thanks. Very interesting. Mr. Baiju Joseph, what would you like to add?
Yeah. So my probably I will try and articulate the strategy which probably I have adopted a bit back in a year back. So we try to do an adaptive trust security mechanisms when we move to cloud, because we are 60-40, 60 on-prem, 40 on the cloud. So such way it is being spreaded. You always have to take care of both. So when we did an adaptive goal to achieve that trust aspects, first and foremost we wanted to put up a strategy, a 5-step strategy. Okay, when we wanted to start the 5-step strategy, okay, 5 step for 5 phases to meet that particular goal, and we will reach that by in 2024. But starting was this device, the devices, a set of user persona. It's very difficult. I'm just telling you what still, which reflect the typical business roles in an organization. To define that in the technical terms was not easy. Of course, you have an HR role defined, but a person who's actually doing in a day-to-day to define into a role which understand by security layer was not easy. So it took some consumable amount of time, and we listed all the other common accesses required across, whether it is on-prem, whether it is working from home, all those aspects. Getting an inventory of all applications and SaaS applications, all hybrid everywhere, and create a map which is illustrating how applications and other the components will interact each other. Okay, if you ask our IT guy or an application owner or a product owner, it takes humongous amount of time. It's not CISO's alone problem. It is an organizational problem. That's what I'm trying to bring, to define this identity, data assets, and the roles is very key to have a successful, adaptive, yet trust goal being defined. So I'll just explain in a very simple way what are these 5 phases. Before we began, we devised this, inventorizing applications, defining the role, the data assets, etc., etc. Then the phase starts. We establish zero trust access baseline. Okay, baseline means what is exactly zero trust means. For us, the truth of identity was the first thing to do solve. Then removing all unused elements which are not supposed to be exposed unnecessarily because of I was working in on-prem or working in office. I may not be doing all the applications which I need it from home, right? I mean, whenever that definition had to be made it. Second, they categorize the risk element, whether it is critical or whether it is what is the critical classifications of those accesses and applications. Then it was simple trust based with IP based. That means if you have a device at home, you will get an access to all those. If you have a device of mobile, you get access to that. And if you're working from office, you get all this. That's all in the beginning. Phase 1, I call it as. But in the phase 2, which we are trying to work on, I mean, we are yet to go to many phases, trying to make an adaptive access. That means try and understand the context. Okay, move from device to identity, or the context is trying to request for an access. That means allow and signal to the perimeters, saying that okay, this person is trying to do this, so only enable that. The rest everything should be not to be allowed. So that means it's a continuous process. So it sits on top of the layer 1, which is phase 1. We call it as adaptive. So that means enrich the trust baseline which you create on the first phase and build an app aware or application aware authorization mechanisms. Third phase we will how to do that is in around mid of 2022 is on demand isolation. That means I started not giving access only on demand basis and demand and approval basis. That means verify and then give it. Okay. So it's apply explicit trust controls and destination based. If I move from here to Ludhiana, will I have an access to from Ludhiana or not? Okay, will I have it from Delhi or not? So this kind of on demand based when I move from the predefined process to other places. And along with the data protection, because data protection is very difficult, even you can do manipulate when work from home scenarios. So that is the fourth phase. And finally, fifth phase is, the real-time analysis. The problem today we face is, or maybe you all, probably I will get educated from all of you. My chief risk officer doesn't know what's happening in, IT. If there is an incident, unless I create a report, incident report and root causes and table him about the problem. How can I bring this real-time visibility to the risk officer so that it's become every incident is a probable threat to the organizations of successes? That's the way we should look at it. Create visibility. How do I bring that visibility across to the organizations? So these are things which I should say is, we try to work on.
Very, very great principles. I think we now move on to the security professionals to tackle the problem. So my question to the security professionals is, how do we move to the cloud environment safely? First question, Mr. Venkateshwaran, and then we move to Mr. Rohita. Yeah, Mr. Venkateshwaran, you can speak here. The question is, how do we...
Yeah, we have been moving...
Yeah,
you're
audible, sir.
See, cloud adoption is happening as per demand. Okay. But before that, there is a need for a cloud strategy. If you take the applications, they will be cloud ready, and the users also should be cloud ready to use the application as per their needs. However, what I have been seeing is, even with Office 365, which is a widely adopted cloud solution, various come to security. Suppose if we want to give particular application to use the email, there is need to give the tenancy rights, and there we always speak of admin rights. For an application to read an email, there is no need to provide the entire rights, admin rights for this thing. But when we take up with the application providers or the service providers, they will always come out with some answer which may not be suitable, and so we give up such implementation. So whatever we have been telling about reports or the creating reports or this thing, these are all a far-reaching, it is going to take much time to reach to that level. Suppose if we, let us say we try to adopt a core banking in the cloud. Okay. See, there are daily day-end reports, there are daily MIS reports which are being generated. There are certain exceptions to be given. There are various activities which are happening, and the day-to-day activities which are happening, which is being done by a set of people round the clock. If we say that this we are moving to cloud and people are working from home on these activities, I don't think the regular day ends will happen. Okay, maybe for small organizations, yes, these are feasible, but for a larger organization where various aspects of the data are there, I think it will be a challenging task, and still the organizations or the application service providers have to go a long way to adapt the cloud. So always for the next 4 to 5 years, organizations will be where we were having on-prem solutions, we will be still in the migratory phase of the applications from on-prem to cloud, and we may have to manage both these aspects. So if you take the cloud, still there is no visibility as regards the controls. Whatever we are putting, yes, those visibilities will be there, but whatever the service providers claim, they are not providing any such reports, or there is no audit reports or this thing. We may put some clauses in the SLAs, but how far it is going to be implemented, we have to see. If you take the oversights and whatever we are speaking about, the vulnerability assessments or the third party assessments of the cloud service providers or the service providers, still yes, at present we are doing some data localization audits, or the some type of audits are happening, but in case of cloud, still I think there will be challenges in adopting fully. Okay, the guidelines have to change, and the methodology in which we are measuring, or the methodology in which we are monitoring the cloud applications and the data, that needs to change. I feel still this area is still evolving. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much. Ms. Babita, for your vision on cloud and
Yeah, as mentioned by other panelists, when it is a visibility that matters, or that is the biggest concern everybody has. That when it is a on-prem, we have our own setup or security measures, which will help us to know that what security measures are there to mitigate the gaps identified, or if there is any risk. When it comes to a cloud provider, they will give us a choice. Like they have these facilities available. If it is a web application firewall, they will say that this is the firewall solution we have, so we can adapt to that. But when it comes to our premises, we can select the best solution which suits our requirement, and we can implement the same. So that is one of the challenge which I see in the cloud. And moreover, we are not having a direct visibility how the security aspect is maintained. We, as mentioned by Mr. Sunil, we have to depend on third-party audit report, how the security measures are taken care at their end. And many a times, on-premises audit is also not allowed by many of the cloud providers. And this data, whether we are opting for a shared cloud, the data shared based infrastructure, or dedicated infrastructure, all these are just a logical differentiation. So we don't have a feel of how secured is our data, whether it's really localized, or whether it is being shared, or whether there is a third party sale happening. So everything depends upon the SLA wherein we get into. And as mentioned by the panelists, the how far in India the SLAs are followed, and how it will be affected. See, once an incident happens, after invoking the SLA doesn't make any sense, because ultimately the brand name is with the company who owns the product. So before going into any solution, whether it is a cloud solution or anything else, first matters is the return of investment. What data or what solution actually I want and why I want to go to a cloud. So that the first we have to decide on that, and based on that only we have to select a solution, and then we have to see what all the security measures that is required for that particular solution which need to be implemented. So these are different stages, as mentioned by Mr. Baiju. We have to think the migration activity in different phases, considering the security as the most priority based on the data, whether it is a secure data or not, how the data need to be saved, how the critical that application is. Based on that, we have to take a call on it.
Thank you. I think Singh, we are coming almost to the end of the conference. So, but I will have a last question and a quick answer, maybe from each panelist. So, what do we do to get to the future security force for the future and organized security culture in the organizations? Quick answers from each as a conclusive statement. Mr. Sunil Kumar, yeah.
Yeah, as I mentioned, setting up the common standards, both for setting up as well as for the auditing practices, that would help to a great extent.
Mr. Gaurav. How would we ensure a future security force and organizational security culture? I think you're in mute.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
I was on mute.
yeah.
Sorry. So see, future. I don't know what the future holds. Okay, information security and the related the threat perceptions are changing on a daily basis, and I think the advent of now talking about AI. Okay, I've started hearing noises about how AI is going to impact both the secure aspects and as well as the threat aspects. Okay, and what tools they will provide in order to have a mechanism to infect an environment is now no longer going to be just the domain of human hackers and manual hacking. Okay, so that's one threat we need to continue to develop. And of course, in the long run, very long run, we talk about a decade or so, we have got quantum computing which is coming in, which can do iterations in milliseconds. Password hacking is not something which is going to take hours. Trying to figure out vulnerabilities in real time or zero-day attacks can be done in not days but in seconds. So it's a game which will keep on evolving, and we'll have to keep on being taking the one-upmanship kind of thing with them in order to survive. And that's how I see it.
Mr. Joseph?
Yeah, so I will, I will put it this way: 5 point, in the order of priority. See, as a CISOs, I have both hands CISOs here, but the priority number one should go to securing the hybrid workplace. Second thing is embracing the zero trust framework. Third is please ensure to skill not only IT security staff, entire employees, okay, or the organization. That is the third one. Fourth one is we need to. IT security is not so intelligent. We don't have intelligent framework. The way we put AI and all intelligent framework towards business or data manipulations or creating propositions, cross sell or upsell, but let's how to as a industry or as a unity, as a team together, we need to bring some intelligence and share the intelligence across. Finally, regulatory complaints, because we can't be surviving without that. So these are the 5 in the order of priority in my list at least.
Ms. Babita?
Yeah, when it comes to this, I will say that every lock has a key. So we security professionals are here to heighten the security measures so that the fraudsters don't get into our system. And security is everyone's responsibility. And if everyone understands their roles and follow the controls in place, a secured environment can be achieved in an organization. And so we have to create a culture, and security culture should be part of our everyday job. And that, I think, that will create a secured environment for everyone.
Mr. Venkateshwaran? How would you establish a organizational security culture and a future security force? Is the question. Yeah.
Yes, really, really redesigning the architecture or version of agreement clause. There is okay. Then, Jana, our interactions and of the process also extend and the staff are to be trained these activities. These are and yes, and reporting. Yes, we have to. Thank you.
Thank you. So that's a very interesting perspectives we got from various panelists. I think to move to the digital world, we need to skill, we need to have standards, we need to trust, we need to have a zero trust environment, we need to have intelligence in the framework, and of course regulatory compliance, and of course lots of tools like AI and other tools that are coming up. I think we have an interesting future ahead, and of course, risks are rising, and uh, all the professionals are ready to face that. But there are a lot of challenges. That's the conclusion of the panel.
Thank you so much, panelists, for joining with us today. I must say it was one great session. Now, as a token of appreciation, we would like to present the appreciation certificate to Mr. S.V. Sundarkrishnan, Chief Risk Officer, Reliance Nippon Life
Thank you.
Insurance. Thank you, sir. Mr. T.R. Venkateshwaran, Chief Information Security Officer, Punjab National Bank. Thank you, sir. Ms. Babita BP, Chief Information Security Officer, CSB Bank. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank
Mr.
you.
Mr. Sunil Kumar Ken, Chief Compliance Officer, Federal Bank. Thank you, sir. Thank you for joining.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Mr. Gaurav Chaudhary, Chief Technology Officer, Reliance General Insurance. Thank you, sir. Mr. Baiju Joseph, Chief Technology Officer, Future General Life Insurance. Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It was a wonderful discussion.
Thank you. Thanks for the moderator, Mr. Sundar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.